So, hi, I'm Dr. Kerry Gelb. I'm one of the producers and writers of the film Open Your Eyes. And I'm an optometrist in New Jersey. I have 4 locations. I graduated from ICO in 1984. I did a residency at the VA hospital at St. Albans in Queens with Murray Fingerette, if anybody knows Murray Fingerette, who lectures quite a bit on glaucoma. I have in my practice, I'm also the president of All Docs, which is the association of the lens crafters doctors and the sublease doctors. So I'm the president of that. We have over 400 members. We have about 800 offices altogether. I've been practicing, after my residency, I worked for an ophthalmologist for a while, and I've been practicing in lens crafters since 1987. I have about 500 to 600 active glaucoma patients. I have many diabetics that I follow, AMD patients. So, and I'm very interested in health, and I'm also on the OWNS, which is the Ocular Wellness and Nutrition Society. I'm on their board. So, so I'm pretty busy with a lot of things. I still see patients 4 days a week, even though I don't have to. I love seeing patients. I love helping patients, and I added lifestyle medicine to practicing because a lifestyle medicine or nutrition is a big part of what we do, even though sometimes people don't realize it. Because if you look at the biggest diseases that we deal with, such as diabetes, macular degeneration, and dry eye, they're all nutrition related or wellness related. So it's not only just nutrition, there's also lifestyle medicine. I'm also a member of the Institute of Functional Medicine. So I go to their conferences, and so I'm trying to stay very well-rounded. Whatever I could do to help a patient, if we find out sawdust would help patients, I'd be willing to recommend that. So I really don't have any, I'm not stuck in any type of mode. I always want to do what's best for our patients.
Awesome. We did have some people submit questions, so if you don't mind, I was going to get started. We do have, we range from first years to fourth years who might be in our club. Do you mind telling us a little bit about how the eye is a biomarker for health and the kind of things you look for?
So there's close to 300 systemic diseases that can affect the eye. So anywhere, when you start from the cornea all the way to back from the tears and the lids all the way back to the optic nerve, there's different systemic diseases that could affect different parts of the eye. As you know, you're all students, optometry students, the eye is very complicated. It's made from many different embryologic tissues. So because of the technology that we use, whether we're using these high-powered microscopes or biomicroscopes to look at the front of the eye, or now with multispectral imaging, we could see 10 microns in the back of the eye and look at the blood vessels. So that's where my interest really lies, because when I first got multispectral imaging and we could look at the capillaries in the back of the eye, I saw these little swollen spots in the back of the eye in the little capillaries. And I was very interested in what that was. And of course, none of the ophthalmology, retina specialists, nobody really knew why those little spots were swollen, although they did feel they were probably microaneurysms. But because of my training in vascular biology from going to the Institute of Functional Medicine to their meetings, I spent 3 days learning from at Vanderbilt. There's a integrative cardiologist. His name is Mark Houston, and he spoke for 3 or 4 days at a meeting I went to somewhere around 2008. And so I'm very well trained in vascular biology and blood tests. I give a lecture on blood tests that I did for CE Wire, a very extensive lecture, and I gave it with a cardiologist. And putting one thing together, a couple things together, I realized it was probably those microaneurysms were probably from elevated insulin because of what insulin could do. It could do everything that elevated blood sugar could do, as far as side effects, but much earlier. So I decided to do blood tests on the next 19 patients who had these microaneurysms, and 18 of the 19 either had elevated insulin or elevated 2-hour insulin. So the eye is a tremendous biomarker for systemic disease. There's been many books written on the eye and systemic disease. And I think that's really important, especially as our technology is getting better. And now that we can see 10 microns, we're going to be able to pick up disease way before PCBs are going to pick up the PCPs are going to pick up the disease, and internists, family practice. So we're really going to be able to pick these things up. So we're a very important part of the healthcare system.
I guess that's part of the quote, the OD is the new GP.
So that quote comes from Lisa Renzi, who's a vision scientist at the University of Georgia. She's not an optometrist, but she looks at the eye in microns, and she realizes the power of what an optometrist could do. But she feels that one of her missions is to convince the optometrists of what they can do.
That's awesome. Definitely, we've had quite a few professors talk about how we're the primary care doctors for the eye, and that we could be someone's, first point of contact into the medical system. Someone who hasn't seen their PCP in years, and we all of a sudden are seeing signs of diabetes or high blood pressure. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, there was a study, I guess the AOA did a study a couple of years ago. I'm not sure if it was 18 or 19, where they could have found more, but 300,000 people in the US were first diagnosed with diabetes by their optometrist.
Wow.
That's very powerful.
That is. I actually saw somebody with type 2 diabetes this afternoon. Fortunately, she's only 2 years into her diagnosis, and her ocular health was fine.
So when you find somebody at risk, the next step is, what do? Do you wait for them to go down the path and become diabetic, or do you intervene at that point? Because it puts us in an interesting situation where, okay, now I know they have these microaneurysms, these patients are at risk. What do I do? And, I can say, well, we'll wait till your blood sugar is, 126, and then we'll refer you. Or what we could do is we could start them on lifestyle medicine, and we have a 10-point plan that we use to decrease the risk from going from pre-diabetes to diabetes. Because Joseph Kraft, who was a pathologist in Chicago, he found that elevated insulin happens way before elevated blood sugar for somebody to become diabetic. So elevated insulin is 90% better than a fasting blood sugar and 50% better than a hemoglobin A1C. And there are studies that show that elevated insulin happens before somebody becomes diabetic, over 20 years before their blood sugar goes up. So that person who could just drop dead of a heart attack, their insulin is very high and it's starting to plaque, that's the time to really try to intervene and help them with lifestyle medicine. And that's a place that us as optometrists, could really help our patients.
Is there any special testing you have to order in order to check their insulin as opposed to like their blood glucose?
Yeah, so you order, when you send them to the lab, you order fasting insulin and 2-hour insulin. And, so fasting blood sugar is a different blood test than fasting insulin. But the 2-hour, when Kraft did it, he did it 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour, 4 hour, 5 hour. I don't think it's necessary to do 5 hours. I think 2 hours, you get a really good result. And people always say that patients aren't going to sit there for 2 hours. And I can tell you, absolutely they will, because my patients do. And I'm in the lens crafters and they do.
Awesome. So you've talked about why this is so important for our patients. Excuse me. What inspired you to make this documentary, and what inspired you to make it about this particular subject?
So one of the problems with our profession is the public doesn't know what we do. They think we do glasses and contacts, and that's an important part of what we do, glasses and contacts. And one of the reasons that is because there's money associated with glasses and contacts. So all the marketing goes into those two areas. So the public doesn't think that we do anything else other than that. A majority of the public, when we showed the film before COVID, and the people who were watching the film critics, they would ask me, how come my optometrist doesn't check to see if I'm at risk for diabetes? How come my optometrist doesn't do this? Do all optometrists check? So people have no idea what we do. They don't have a clue. And unfortunately, the AOA hasn't been able to get the message out. So we try to team up with the AOA for them to show the movie, and they're willing to show parts of it through their social media. But I was trying to get them to have a film night for the vision community where I would answer questions and the head of the AOA would answer questions. But I think it would be great if the student body of the AOA saw the movie, and we could have a movie night where I could answer questions. But until the public knows what we do and they understand it, we're going to be inundated with our patients going to these disruptors, such as going online and looking at their phone and renewing their glasses prescription or their contact lens prescription, and bypassing the eye health part of what we do. And that's a pretty scary proposition from where I'm sitting.
Yeah, I think we can all agree that getting your contact lenses online or glasses online is definitely not ideal. From your perspective, because I know I've heard quite a few people say they don't think optometry is out there enough and people don't know what we do. Do you have any ideas how we can fix that?
Yeah, one of the things we could do is promote the film. So once the film is, after we show it to the vision community, and anything as students, students are very powerful. You could do a lot to help even get other schools to see the film, help get the student part of the AOA to show the film, so that all the students out there are aware of the film. And once we have the film out there, and the film is broken up into little 1 minute, 30-second spots where people could play it on their social media. And once, we get the force of the optometrists and the optometry patients to start playing this, that's how we could get the public to get a better understanding on how we could help them as physicians.
Excellent. I definitely agree. And I know a lot of the students at our school who are part of the AOSA. So whenever the video is available on those broader streaming platforms, I'm definitely happy to.
And I can make it available whenever you guys could organize, because I don't have a way of organizing with the student association of the AOA. So if you could do it, I'll make sure the film is there and I'll be there so we could spread the message, because, I'm older now and soon I'll be retired, within 10 years. But really, I want our profession to live, because we do great things for patients. We save lives, we save vision, in addition to, contacts and glasses. And now we have an extra part of our tool chest with lifestyle medicine.
Definitely. You also mentioned in the video kind of another, I guess, quote unquote, epidemic that I know a lot of optometrists have been concerned about, the myopia epidemic. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so back in, I think in 1900, there was probably 3% of the population was myopic. Now it's like 42%. of the population is myopic, and we don't spend enough time outside. Prisoners are mandated to be outside for 2 hours, but our kids are sitting there looking at their cell phone. And now, because of the situation that we have, the kids are doing everything online and everything in front of the computer. And the studies are very clear that before people become myopic, that being outside in the sun, even for a half hour or an hour a day, will certainly decrease the risk. And looking at these digital devices do increase the risk. It's very important to get natural sunlight, because especially in the morning, because in the morning you have infrared and you have blue light. The blue helps wake people up, and along with the infrared, the blue, and then depending on what latitude you're at, the UV will eventually come up. And the combination of all these different rays of light coming from the sun helps make different neurotransmitters and different hormones within the body, because there's a different pathway other than the vision pathway going through the eye. So that pathway actually helps make hormones and neurotransmitters such as dopamine, serotonin. So people think, and when you're looking at a computer all day, it's like you're looking at 12 o'clock noon. So you're not able to get your melatonin to be released at night, so people have trouble sleeping. People think melatonin is made at night, but it's actually made in the morning and then released at night, and it's made from being outside. So it's really important that people drive, to get some sun with their sunroof open if they have one, or a little bit maybe with the window open, especially in the winter. Turn your heat up, because light is nonlinear, and light is from the sun is very important. If you take any plant, try take an orange tree and try covering it with a tarp, see how long it lasts. So just like animals and plants need sun, we need it as well. And our kids are not spending enough time outside in the sun, and we're way too much on digital devices. And the blue light, like I said, coming off the computer is at 455. So but a lot of the blue protection is at 400. So it's not at the 445 to 455 area where we need protection. And again, the computer is always when we're looking at the computer or a digital device, it's always like you're looking at 12 noon. So we're starting with suppressed melatonin.
All of us are students, and unfortunately, with distance learning in effect right now, a lot of us spend a lot of time on the computer. Any advice for the things we can do to mitigate the effects, especially on our circadian rhythms? Because I know I definitely like to get a good night's sleep.
Yeah, so you want to get blue. I think you should get blue filtering lenses that do 455, that block at 455, and that you spend time outside, that you get sun. Now, younger people generally, are able to overcome it a little bit better than older people, but still, it's important to take a computer break. And I know, you're a student, and in 4 years it's going to be over. And then if you do a residency like I did, maybe 5 years. But you got to take breaks, and you got to go outside, even if it's 10 minutes, or you study outside if you can. Since you're home, if you could go outside in the sun and study, that would be awesome.
Do you have any experience with myopia control or myopia management?
Yeah, I do myopia control in my office. I do a lot of CRT. I've been doing CRT since 2000, since it was approved, I believe in 2003. I was interviewed on television. If you go to YouTube, you go to my name. The other thing is I have a podcast under my name, and Open Your Eyes. And I've interviewed some really great people on myopia control. So you can see Nikki Despeditas and some of the big names in optometry on myopia control. And I've also interviewed a lot of really important people in the area of preventative medicine, such as Dale Bredesen, who wrote The End of Alzheimer's, or Robert Lustig, who has the #1 health YouTube video of all time, 11 million views on the problems with sugar and fructose. So yeah, go to my podcast and subscribe. And if you like something, leave some comments, and that helps keep the movie alive. So that's important as well.
Definitely. I'm always looking for a good podcast to listen to while I drive to and from school. You went a lot of places in your documentary, and you met a lot of people. And what I thought was very interesting was you talked to a lot of different people from different professions and different walks of life. Can you tell us a little bit about your travels and your interview experiences?
So I was in the U.S. and then I was in Canada, where I interviewed Jason Fung, who he's written a number of books. He wrote the series of codes they call obesity code. He has one, I think, called the cancer code. But he's a great speaker. He's on YouTube. If you want to learn about insulin resistance and diabetes, Jason Fung is fantastic. He was great to speak with. I was in Budapest, and I spoke with this Dr. Zolt, and he spoke on my myopia control and myopia. He's an expert on myopia management. But my heart is in Costa Rica with the centenarians, because the centenarians were just like, they live to 100 years old, and they don't get the diseases that we get in the West because of their lifestyle. Being out. I was very surprised how much time they spend outside. They're outside 8 hours a day. They grow their own food. They have their own chickens and turkeys, and they grow their own plants, and that's how they eat. They basically eat off the land. They get water from this special place, which is full of calcium and magnesium. So it's not just diet, it's the whole, they're not exposed to all these chemicals that we're exposed to. And we're looking at possibly doing a second film where we do cataract surgery on the centenarians. So we have a cataract surgeon lined up, and also we're going to do a macular degeneration study with them, because the ophthalmologist there who sees the patients says they don't get macular degeneration like we do. Because as we know, that there was basically no macular degeneration in the late 1800s, and it's not because people didn't live as long. When they look at people who lived the same amount of time, there was basically no macular degeneration. In fact, if you look at the books, the ophthalmology books back in the early 1900s, the late 1800s, macular degeneration isn't even in there, or maybe there's one page. So it wasn't until like the 20s and the 30s when our diets changed. Right now, 63% of our diet is processed food. The worst being the inflammatory oils, the polyunsaturated fatty acids, the PUFA oils, and then there's sugar and trans fats and processed grains, which make up about 63% of the processed food that we eat, which is probably responsible for most of the chronic disease that we have. There were basically no cardiologists back in the late 1800s. So there was basically no cardiovascular disease, cancer, and macular degeneration just ran with these diseases. Dr. Chris Kenobi, who I interviewed on my podcast, is an ophthalmologist who basically gave up ophthalmology to study this, and he has great research showing that his hypothesis of what I just mentioned is in fact true.
I really love the part of your documentary where you were in Costa Rica. I had the privilege to study abroad there in 2016, and it's definitely a beautiful place with beautiful people. I've never eaten more rice and beans in my whole life, but it was probably really good for me in hindsight. I was wondering, comparing Costa Rica to the United States, you did mention their diets are very different. They're outside a lot more, and they're definitely way closer to the equator than we are. I was also wondering if you thought there were any other differences. I mean, obviously they have lifestyle differences. Here we're very go, 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 on screens a lot. And also, if I'm not mistaken, they have universal healthcare in Costa Rica. Do you think that plays a role?
In Nicoya, where I was with the centenarians, basically they don't seek healthcare. I mean, very rarely do they even consider going to a doctor. But universal health care for them, if they need cataract surgery, there's like a 3 to 5 to 7 year waiting list for them to get cataract surgery in Nicoya. They have about, how many was it? About 170 centenarians on the list, and then there's probably another 200 people on the list that need cataract surgery. So they have to wait years and years and years. So that's one of the downsides of universal health care, the way I see it, and that their equipment was awful. I mean, they didn't have an OCT. I got someone to donate an OCT to them, but the equipment was very, equipment like we used back in 1960. So the government really didn't give them very good equipment for ophthalmology. So if they needed OCT, they had to go 4 hours to the big city. So in the cities of Costa Rica, the kids have about 30 to 40% myopia, but in the rural areas, it's only about 15%. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's what was my observation.
It does. I was largely near the larger cities. I was in Iskazu
Mm-hmm.
for a majority of my trip, and then we hit a lot of the big touristy kind of sites. So I think it was definitely a different perspective. Let's see. I'm going to get to some of the questions we had submitted. Someone was wondering if you interviewed any registered dietitians.
We didn't. No, we didn't interview any registered dietitians.
Was there any reason for that, or do you kind of wish you would have?
No, I mean, I think the MDs that we interviewed were very up on nutrition and health. And, we thought that, the goal of the film was really to paint optometry in a very good light. And we wanted people to brag about optometrists who weren't optometrists. So we thought that the MDs that we picked would be the best to do that.
Awesome. And I didn't catch this. If you did you talk to anybody in public health during the filming of your documentary?
Not that I know of. I'm sure, we talked to a lot of people, and I don't know if one of them maybe had a background in public health, but I'm not sure.
Just curious, not passing any judgment or anything.
No,
We're
no,
just
no,
a
no.
public health club. Let's see. Somebody was wondering what we can do as optometry students to properly educate ourselves on nutrition, to better help ourselves and our patients, since it's not really part of our traditional curriculum. And I'm going to read this part because I think it's funny. They don't want to be like the 1992 food pyramid looking back.
That's great. I mean, and there's a lot of politics in the food pyramid, and there was a lot of mistakes in the food pyramid. But the only way to really learn this is you have to be self-taught and self-motivated, and you have to know who you have to read and study, and maybe join like A4M or Institute of Functional Medicine like I have, and know some of the players like Mark Hyman, who's a medical doctor who's written many books on functional medicine. So it's really not just nutrition, it's really it's lifestyle medicine. So he's good. David Perlmutter has written Brain, which is a very, very good book. The Paleo Diet was written by Lauren Cordain, who was actually an optometry student who dropped out of optometry school his first or second semester and wound up becoming a professor, I think in Colorado somewhere. So those are good books to get started with learning about health and nutrition. There's some good ones written by cardiology, and then there's always the debate, which is best keto, Mediterranean, vegan, vegetarian. And but I think if you read these books and get different different opinions from these doctors, you'll start being able to educate yourself, because unfortunately medical doctors get I think they get maybe on the best of medical schools, they get 4 hours on nutrition. Most of them get nothing. So usually a mom knows more about nutrition than a medical doctor. And we deal a lot with nutrition related diseases. So I think it's important that we learn about it. And, you start watching, you read one of Jason Fung's books, or you start watching some of these YouTube videos on Jason Fung, Mark Hyman, David Perlmutter, and then you start getting a good sense of, of, of nutrition. And then it starts becoming very repetitive. So you can learn it pretty, it takes a while to learn it, and you have to have an interest in it. I had a big interest because I used to get sick all the time. I would always get the flu. I always had a cold. And that's how I got interested in juicing and nutrition and learning about it, really from a personal point of view. And then I was asked to give a lecture on diabetes for the NJSOP a number of years ago. And then, I studied diabetes. I knew more about diabetes when I gave that lecture than probably any endocrinologist in the country, because I listened to one lecture after hours and hours of lecturing, learning about it. And then I read a book by Mark Hyman, and that really helped put me over the edge to broaden out the perspective of things. So, it's like macular degeneration. I think in optometry, I think it's pretty well known that macular degeneration, people recommend nutrition to try to prevent it. But if you just wait till they start bleeding and you give injections, you have all these years that you could do to help decrease their risk of getting it.
I agree. I know topics like this can be kind of sensitive to discuss with patients, especially us. We aren't necessarily with patients where we've developed a good rapport. We very rarely see people, more than one time since we're at the school. Any advice for bringing up kind of sensitive topics like weight, lifestyle, or anything like that?
No, I think patients really want to know about this. And if you're educated and you're smart about it, patients always will say to me, how come my PCP didn't tell me about this? How come my internist didn't tell me about this? And the truth is they really don't know about it, and patients are very, very appreciative if you talk to them about health and nutrition. And you can always say, sometimes I'll start it off and say to a patient, there's something, do you want me to treat the symptoms, or do you want me to teach you the cause of the problem, and we could try to treat the cause? And over the last, 10 years since I've been doing this, I've only had one patient tell me that, just give me the drug. I don't care what caused it. And but other than that, most people are very open-minded. If they're not open to it, there's no reason to discuss it. That's fine.
That's excellent. I'm glad you've had such a positive response from your patients. I think that's really encouraging for all of us. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about the plan that you ended up using on yourself, and now that you prescribe now for your patients?
So really, the most important thing is I think people should follow what I find to be most effective is a paleo type diet or an ancestral type diet. But different ancestral diets are different. Some just eat meat and some just eat plants, and it depends on really where you are, and where you grew up, where what part of the world you're from. I think the most important thing is if you eat real food and you don't eat anything that's artificial. I think that's the most important. And everything you should eat should be organic. There was a study done at Columbia Presbyterian, and they found that 98 or 99% of cancers are from environmental toxins. And that I just did a good podcast on environmental toxins with a Dr. Lou from California on environmental toxins and poor nutrition, too much sugar. And so you really want to eat real food, and you want to avoid, there's certain things you want to avoid, like sugar or things that turn into sugar. You want to avoid dairy. So you want to eat you want to eat meats or or proteins such as pastured raised meats, organic turkey and chicken, wild salmon. And you want to eat good fats such as avocado, cooked with either coconut oil or olive oil. And then you want to eat a lot of plants. You want to eat a lot of organic greens and different. You want to eat from the color of the rainbow. And raw nuts and seeds are good. And then certainly exercise and sleep and getting safe sun. All those are important.
Do you have any go-to meals or recipes you could share with us?
Well, I'll give you one of the things that I love as far as I'll give you a snack. So I like raw cacao, uh, coconut flakes, uh, uh, blueberries, uh, chia seeds or hemp seeds, and I'll give you a secret for a sweetener. Uh, Good quality D-ribose. So D-ribose is one of the awesome foursome. There's a doctor who has a famous last name. I don't believe he's related. His name is Dr. Steven Sinatra, who's an integrative cardiologist. And his awesome foursome to prevent cardiovascular disease is D-ribose, magnesium, acetyl L-carnitine, and magnesium. So there's D-ribose made by a company called Douglas Labs, and it's called Corvalin. And that D-ribose is an excellent sweetener because it helps make ATP along with coenzyme Q10. But don't use it at night because it's going to affect your sleep, and don't use it. You got to use a little bit at a time because some people could get a rapid heartbeat from it.
Awesome. I think there might be an Open Your Eyes cookbook in your future.
Maybe.
Any foods that we need to avoid like the plague?
Yeah, any type of artificial sweeteners, any type of processed foods you want to avoid. You want to avoid, the worst is sugar, high fructose corn syrup. And again, I did a great podcast with Robert Lustig on that, high fructose corn syrup, soda, those type of things you want to avoid. Avoid processed food. If there's more than one ingredient that you can't pronounce on the label, don't eat it. Everything you should eat should have one ingredient: organic broccoli, organic apple, organic spinach. Everything blueberries, organic. Everything should have one ingredient. You get into trouble when you start eating something like a Pop-Tart, which has 42 ingredients, none of which you could pronounce.
Have you looked into it all, the way ingredients are regulated in the United States compared to the rest of the world? I think we let some stuff into our food that a lot of other countries keep out.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. That brings up GMOs and things like that. And there's a lot of politics and, a lot of lobbying money that pay off our politicians. So that's why a lot of people that preach nutrition and health, like Dr. Mark Hyman or Dr. Perlmutter that I mentioned before, they feel, Hyman has a great book on that. It just came out. His newest book is all about that. And, I think you just have to get educated. You're not going to beat big foods, big pharma, big agriculture, the chemical industry. The only way we could beat them is with our pocketbook. So if people just buy organic, then big agriculture is going to be forced to make organic products because they're going to want to fulfill the needs to make money for their shareholders. But to get to change laws through politicians to make the food healthier is a pipe dream, in my opinion.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Consumers can say a whole lot with their pocketbooks. Any other advice you'd like to share with us about just kind of regaining our health or staying in shape? Grad school is a lot, and I know for me personally, when it's a midterm week and I just think, that hour walk isn't going to help me as much as this next hour of studying. Any advice for us?
I agree with that. The body is very good about repairing itself. So when you're in optometry school, your number one job is to study and to do good in optometry school and to be a good optometrist. So when you get out, to help the public. So, but if you could catch an hour here or a half hour here and there, catch it. Otherwise, when you're during finals, midterms, you got to study. You got to study, but most people in optometry school are young, and the body will heal on its own if when you have the time to give it the right ingredients, nutrition, and lifestyle, the body will regenerate, and it will detox. Detoxification is very important for the body as well.
That's definitely some good news. I'm gonna go, I think I've been through most of the questions that people submitted. I'm gonna open it up. So if anybody would like to submit a question in the chat, I'm happy to read it.
Sure.
Or if you just want to open your mic and ask a question for Dr. Gelb, let us know.
I just wanted to ask, what school did you go to?
ICO.
Okay.
And I did my residency at the VA, and I said at the beginning at St. Albans with Maurice Fingerette, ocular disease.
What are your suggestions for patients who don't have like an income to buy organic, especially now since like the big companies don't make it, so it is more expensive to produce organic?
That is true. It is more expensive, but there are things people could buy that are organic and that are healthy to be able to get around it. So but it is a little bit more expensive. But then again, getting sick is probably a lot more expensive than eating organics. But there are fruits and vegetables that people could get that are healthy that aren't that expensive. But that's a question that we always get, that question.
Have you found a particular grocery store or place to buy fruits and vegetables that makes it a little more affordable?
Yeah, I think if you go to farmers markets, those are the best, or co-ops. It's going to be a lot less expensive than going to Whole Foods. The food co-ops that they used to, people would do in college. There are these different societies like Weston Price. You could join those local chapters, and they have ways of helping people get food much less expensive.
A question I think I missed. So far, everyone's I've talked to has really enjoyed your documentary. How has the rest of the optometry community reacted?
People are really excited that we did this, and they want to get the word out, because it's so important that we get the word out because the public doesn't know what we do. So we got to get the word out with either little vignettes from it, sending people to the website, the Open Your Eyes website, going to the Open Your Eyes podcast. So it's very important that everybody tries to help to get the word out.
I definitely agree. How has the reaction been from just like regular MDs and DOs? I know we get a lot of people referred to our clinic from their PCP saying, you should go get this eye exam.
Well, when you do integrative medicine, like I do, and I did a VA residency, so I'm very well trained in ocular disease. Like I said, I have hundreds of glaucoma patients. I probably see 15 glaucoma patients a day, just for glaucoma follow-ups. And but when you get into this community of integrative medicine, those doctors will refer to you. I have doctors referring to me from, internists that do integrative medicine, MDs from 45 miles away, just because I'm proficient in this extra part of medicine.
when you advertise for your practice, do you advertise that you kind of incorporate this holistic approach, or I guess how does that part work out?
Yeah, I really don't advertise for my practice, other than, Facebook or Instagram or something like that. And when I did Facebook, I used to do it a lot on Facebook. And every day I'd put on some new study that was in the world of nutrition or lifestyle medicine. But since the movie came out, I kind of stopped doing it because it was mixing up the message a little bit. Because I was mixing up my practice and the Open Your Eyes, so I wanted to concentrate more on Open Your Eyes. So with Open Your Eyes on Instagram, we do that.
That makes sense. Does anyone else have any questions they'd like to ask or put in the chat? I'm not seeing anything come in. Dr. Gelb, is there anything else you'd like to talk to us about tonight?
No, I mean, I'm really excited that your group has watched the film and that you've enjoyed it, and anything you could do with the students with the AOA, I'd be happy to do this with a much broader group to show it and answer questions for the students.
Oh, we have a question in the chat. Have you ever taken any culinary medicine courses, and what is your opinion on these classes?
I've never taken a culinary, cooking, courses. And I've read about it, because most of the doctors, they come out with a book and a bestseller like the ones I mentioned, Hyman and Perlmutter and Dale Bredesen. And then they usually follow up with a second book, and then eventually a cookbook comes out. So they have Preventing Alzheimer's cookbook and the Cardiovascular Disease cookbook. So they usually come out with one. Perlmutter is a neurologist. Bredesen, he's really more of a research MD in the area of Alzheimer's. And that was a very good interview that I did with him on the podcast.
Well,
Joel Kahn, who I have on my podcast, is a vegan cardiologist, and then I was going to interview a paleo cardiologist, Jack Wilson. I'm just waiting to set that up.
awesome.
So go to YouTube, you can see it.
We'll definitely have to let everybody know about the podcast if they want to, tune in and get their little extra dose talking about nutrition and other topics. I'm not seeing any more questions come in. Just thank you so much for meeting with us tonight and letting us see your documentary. We all really enjoyed it, and we're so grateful for you taking the time to be with us.
Thank you, Rachel. And if you guys have any further questions, just email us and we'll answer them for you.
Sounds good. And thanks again.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you. And thank you, Madison, for the kind words. Thank you. Thank you, Samantha. Take care. Bye, guys.